So it's actually been proven that you'll be able to play 87% of fingerstyle songs just using these 10 patterns, which I'm about to show you. Actually, I just made that bit up, but it certainly feels that way to me. And these patterns are used a lot, and by learning them, you'll be able to play loads of famous fingerstyle tunes. And I think they'll give you a really solid foundation in fingerstyle guitar. So this lesson is aimed at fingerstyle beginners, and if you've not done any of this kind of thing before, then I just suggest taking it really slowly, taking these patterns one at a time, getting really comfortable with them, and then moving on to the next one when you're ready. And there's easily 6 months of work contained within this video, so don't feel bad about taking your time with it. And if you have played a bit of fingerstyle before, then maybe you'll be able to go a little bit faster, and you can use these 10 patterns as kind of a fingerstyle workout to really get your technique together. So in traditional YouTube style, I have a top 10 must-know essential fingerstyle patterns for you. And I'm calling them folk fingerstyle patterns, although they're very versatile, and you'll certainly find this kind of thing in blues and in country and in indie. They're all over the place, these kind of patterns. So let's get started with pattern number 1. Let's start nice and simple, and then as we go through these patterns, I'm gradually going to push up the difficulty level. And the first thing I want to say is that with this type of fingerstyle playing, it's really all about the thumb and keeping a steady alternating bass note. That's what holds everything together. And then the fingers really just do their thing on the higher strings. So as far as some basic technical pointers go for your picking hand, I would suggest that you keep your thumb playing the bass notes on the lowest 3 strings, and then you're going to be using your fingers on the highest strings. And what I would recommend is generally using your first finger, your index finger on the 3rd string, your middle finger on the 2nd string, and your ring finger on the high E strings. Just a guideline, so there are no rules, and there are plenty of great fingerstyle players I can think of who just use 3 fingers, or even a lot of blues players who just use a thumb and 1 finger. That's totally acceptable, but I think at least in the beginning, have a try using 3 fingers on your picking hand, and it can lead to being a bit more versatile in the long run, I think. Let's start by holding down a simple C chord, and we're going to start by establishing that alternating bass. I'm just going between the 5th string and the 4th string. Really important you just get comfortable with that very simple motion. So just rocking back and forth between those 2 strings and just keeping it nice and steady, nice and even. And as far as the hand position goes with your picking hand, I do recommend that you try and keep your palm and the side of the hand quite close to the strings. Often with this kind of style of playing, you're going to want to just have a little bit of gentle palm muting just to stop the bass strings from getting too woolly. And you can play this style with more of a classical or flamenco style picking hand where your wrist comes out a little bit more, but that means that you can't really get that muting happening, so not quite so good for this kind of thing if you ask me. So once you've got that alternating bass, we're going to add the fingers, and it's going to be nice and simple, and we're just going to have the fingers in between the bass notes. So we're going to play a bass note, and then first finger is going to play the 3rd string, and then the next bass note, and that's going to be followed by the 2nd string. So in terms of strings, it's 5, 3, 4, 2. So very simple, but make sure you're really comfortable with that. Make sure you can do it really well and it's smooth and it's even. This is where you're just going to need to put the time in if you've never done this kind of thing before, because it's all about muscle memory and repeating it. So take it slow, be accurate, and then just play that pattern 100 times, play it 1,000 times, just until it becomes completely automatic. So that's our basic pattern. It will work well with all 5th string root chords, so C, A minor, those kind of chords. If you're playing this pattern with a chord that has its root on the 6th string, then you'll just have to adjust the bass slightly. So this is worth practicing as well. It's the same pattern, but instead of the bass going from 5 to 4, the bass is going from 6 to 4, and that's the most common alternating bass that you get with 6 string root chords. So if I hold down a G chord, then our pattern will look like this. So we've got 6, 3, 4, 2. So once you've got both of those together, we can try taking that pattern through a simple chord progression. So let's try C, A minor, F and G, and that would sound like this. So pattern number 2, we're just going to reverse the order of the fingers. So instead of going 5, 3, 4, 2, we're going to go 5, 2, 4, 3. So and the same thing applies if you're using a 6-string root chord. The bass is going to go from the 6th to the 4th strings. Why don't we take that through a little chord progression as well. So let's try C, G, A minor, F this time. Pattern number 3 is another simple variation on our basic pattern, and it sounds like this. Very simple but very, very widely used, this pattern. And what's going on is this: we've got our normal alternating bass, and this time we've got finger notes after the 2nd and 3rd bass notes. So that looks like this. 5, 4, 3, 5, 2, 4. Got a nice skip to it, this pattern. That's our pattern. Let's apply that to a chord progression. Why don't we go A minor, F, C and G this time. And once again, you're just adjusting that bass pattern slightly when you're using a 6-string root chord, so you're going from 6 to 4 instead. So that would sound like this. So far with these patterns, we've had the thumb and the finger notes separate, but equally common is to have thumb and finger notes sounding at the same time. And then you've got kind of a pinch effect going on with your picking hand. So this pattern sounds like this. Very, very common, this pattern. And we're starting off with a pinch, and I've got the thumb on the 5th string. I'm using my middle finger on the 2nd string, just pinching those two together. Then I've got my index finger on the 3rd string, and then the next bass note. And then in the second half of the pattern, it's just thumb alternating with fingers. Let's have a chord progression then. Why don't we do C, C7, and then F, and back to C again. And with the F chord, you've got a choice. You can play it as a bar chord, or quite often with fingerstyle stuff, I just use my thumb over the top. But the progression sounds like this. Next one is another pattern with a pinch, and this time we're moving the pinch to beat 2, and it sounds like this. So starting off with just a single bass note, then I'm pinching the 4th and 2nd strings together, bass note, then the 3rd string and another bass note. as usual with a 6-string root chord, the thumb is just going to switch to 6 to 4. So let's take that pattern through a chord progression. Why don't we go C, and then I'm just going to move that C chord up 2 frets, and then we'll have an F and a G. So and one great thing about these fingerstyle patterns is that you can string them together in various different ways. And in fact, in fingerstyle songs, very often you've got a combination of different picking patterns. So this next example is a combination of the previous 2 patterns, and it sounds like this. So we've got pattern 5, and then straight into pattern 4. So it's a 2-bar pattern which just has a little bit more interest to it. So let's take that through the same chord progression as previously. It's going to get a little bit harder now, and for the next few patterns we're going to make the bass part a little bit more complex. With a lot of fingerstyle stuff, you've got a choice of keeping it simple and just rocking back and forth between a pair of different bass notes, or you can add in a 3rd bass note, and then you're getting into what is known as Travis picking. We're going to start with our C chord once again, and instead of this being our bass line, just 5 to 4, we're going to do this. So we're going from 5 to 4 and then 6 to 4. So 5, 4, 6, 4. And if you're holding down a C chord, then you're just going to need to move your 3rd finger over to the 3rd fret on the low E string for that 3rd note. Or of course you can refinger your C chord and play it like that, in which case you don't need to bother moving a finger. But that's our bass part. And now we're going to add in the fingers, and it's really just the same pattern as pattern number 1, but we've just added in the Travis bass part. So that sounds like this. So it starts exactly like pattern 1. So 5, 3, 4, 2, and then all we're doing is changing the bass note. So we've got 6, 3, 4, 2. Then it's just a question of putting those 2 bits together. And once again, it's all about muscle memory, all about repetition. So just play that thousands of times until it becomes completely second nature. Let's have a chord progression. Why don't we have C, C7, and then I'm going to keep the same chord shape. I'm just going to move it up to an F7. So So if we want to use that pattern with a 6-string root chord, then the bass pattern is going to change slightly. So let's see how it would work on an E chord. And now the thumb is going to do this. So we're going from 6 to 4 and then 5 to 4. we add in the fingers, so we've got 6, 3, 4, 2, 5, 3, 4, 2. And let's have a chord progression. Why don't we go E, F sharp minor, G sharp minor, and A. So all 6-string root shapes in this one. And the next pattern goes like this. That same Travis style bass, so just 5, 4, 6, 4, and this time we're introducing a pinch on the first beat, so we've got pinching the 5th and the 2nd strings together, and then for the rest of the pattern you've got alternating thumb and fingers. Added interest, you could actually add in some different high notes, and that would sound a bit like this. So then you're getting into kind of Dear Prudence type territory. And when we're moving to 6-string root chords, the same thing applies as with the previous pattern. The bass part has to change just slightly. So if we did that pattern with an F chord, it would look like this. So the bass is 6, 4, 5, 4. So let's have a chord progression. Let's go C, A minor, F, and G7. So the last pattern is really just a variation on pattern 4, and we're just adding in the Travis bass to that pattern, and it sounds like this. So the bass is the same. I'm just holding down a C chord again here, so it's 5, 4, 6, 4. We've got a pinch on beat 1, and then we've got the 3rd string with the finger and the bass note. With a 6-string root chord. And let's have our last chord progression. Why don't we go C, E, F, and back to C again. And once again, if you wanted to, you can throw in some variations on the top notes as well. So So those are the 10 patterns that I hope are going to make you into a fingerstyle superstar. And I realise that I've included a ton of information in this one short video, maybe too much information. I could have made a 6-hour course on this material or something, but I think that's fine. Just take your time. If you need to spend a week on each of these patterns, a month on each of these patterns, then do that. And just gradually put the time in, put the effort in, and you will get there. And just briefly, for those of you who are curious about the guitar I'm using today, this is a Martin 0015M. It's a 00 sized acoustic, which just means it's got a slightly smaller body size, which I think works well for fingerstyle guitar. It's got a nice balanced tone to it, and it's all mahogany, so again that's got particular tonal characteristics, perhaps a slightly darker tone than a spruce topped acoustic guitar or something like that. That's it for this video. I hope you find it useful, and I hope it serves as a nice introduction to the delights of fingerstyle guitar. And where do you go from here? I would suggest just learning as many tunes as you can, and there are plenty of quite beginner-friendly fingerstyle songs that use exactly these patterns. So I'll try and put together a bit of a list or a playlist of various beginner-friendly fingerstyle pieces for you. Thanks very much for watching. I shall see you next time.